All right. Welcome, Shawn Melville, to Let's Talk About It podcast. A couple quick notes from our sponsors. So we have three sponsors today. One, of course, being Ipsum Technologies, with Shawn Melville. You are the founder as well as managing director.
Managing Director and co-founder of Ipsum Technologies.
Wonderful. The other two sponsors are 3D Elegance, daily wedding invitations. I'll put a link up for that. And Tremi, I had Rajiv Ramlogan. He's the founder of Tremi. They're a company right now that they do a lot of informational videos on how to solve a lot of our problems. I know their last video that went viral was on solving the flooding solution, the flooding problem in Carney and stuff. So he actually was interviewed on TV6 and stuff for that. So
Okay,
yeah, a lot of
excellent.
people out here doing things. You are the co-founder of Ipsum Technologies. So who
Right.
else was involved in the founding of that?
So I have three other co-founders.
Mhm.
Mr. Marlon Perillo, very, very dynamic speaker. He's a police officer and probably the only blind police officer in the
Right, he's the
in the force.
technological evangelist.
Yes,
All
yes,
right.
yes. So in terms of this, give you a little quick backstory as to how we actually got started. I attended a startup weekend event back in 2014 around June, and I went with the intention of starting something that might help persons with disabilities. And lo and behold, Marlon Pereira is there, and so I see him there, and I'm just curious as to know, okay, what is Marlon going to pitch? And so Marlon gets up on stage and he says, "Here's what I'm blind. I can't see past my nose.
Hmm.
I want something that can help me with navigation." And so, he pitched this idea that he wanted a device that could help with identifying obstacles in the way and helping them to be able to get around that. And, the idea itself was well received by the audience. And I actually loved the idea. I told him, "Here's what, let's work on it. We will tweak it a little bit." And so we conceived that here's what, instead of having a person behind the camera on the other side looking to see what is in front of the person, we could actually have a device that is able to sense obstacles within the environment and then use that information to then process it and then give feedback to say, okay, left clear, right clear, left block. And the technology
Okay,
already
okay.
existed.
Oh, the technology existed?
Yeah, the technology exists in terms of Google self-driving cars, and so you have
Okay,
all these
okay.
autonomous systems, but we haven't used it for persons who are visually impaired or blind.
Right, didn't use that technology to augment our senses at all. That was just for self-driving cars. So how does it work? It's I think it was 9 ultrasonic sensors that you wear, and it's done a cummerbund or something around your waist.
Right, so we have an array of ultrasonic sensors. Yes, for now it's nine into the prototype, and that senses in all different directions. And it's worn around the chest or torso area, right? And that allows you to be able to detect obstacles low to the ground, mid waist, and then up to about head height. And the reason why we want to be able to do that is because you may have obstacles that are not on the ground, like tree branches, etc., that the person who's blind won't really be able to pick up. And so I've had the experience of telling Marlon, duck,
Yeah.
and especially when it comes to overhanging branches on the sidewalk.
Hmm.
And so, these are the types of problems that we want to address, and we've been able to build a prototype. Through the electrical engineering lab here, we actually built a prototype. Subsequently to winning the startup weekend, we actually won the Idea Innovation competition, and we got grant funding to build out that prototype. So we have a functional prototype that I've been demonstrating at different conferences and events, etc., internationally, to see how we can get further support to build out an actual product.
So what are the capabilities of this device? Like, could it sense moving objects as well, like a bicycle driving down a sidewalk or a car coming across the road while coming down the road?
Well, it's interesting that you brought up that particular question because that's a current limitation of what the prototype can do. We recognize that we live in a dynamic world, and that there are a number of things that it could go wrong. So, for instance, vehicles, moving obstacles, etc. These are all things that we need to be able to take into consideration. But of course, due to limitations in funding as well as technical knowledge, it wasn't to be able to be done at the point in time when we were doing the first round of
Yeah.
the prototype. But what we recognize is that we want to incorporate all these additional features that we think will help to make the product much more safe and would make it more reliable.
I think this would be something good for people to, donate for you guys to develop because something that I didn't really consider until this morning, thinking about it, was how dangerous it actually is for a blind person to cross the road if they don't have that pedestrian crossing lights. I mean, they have no way to tell who driving, and I mean the way people drive down here,
Yeah,
and then to get the technology to be able to detect something that far away, moving at whatever speed, you will need like a lot of effort to be put into something like that to make it up to that standard.
yes, yes, that is very, very true. And I mean, we have a very ambitious goal because we want to be able to help people to navigate without the use of the cane. And, I've had, a number of persons, think, okay, well, the cane is very, very essential part of navigation for someone who's blind. But we recognize that as technology is advancing, it has its limitations. And so we set that goal because we want people to say, here's what, you no longer have to be defined by your ability and you have to require a cane in order to be able to move around. Now, over time, it's not going to be something that we'll be able to do immediately, right?
Hmm.
The cane has its uses. It helps people to identify that this person is blind. And without that, sometimes people would assume that, well, they do have a cane and you could see any good.
Yeah.
But there are varying degrees of visual impairment. There's a spectrum, and so people they could have low vision, but sometimes the low vision might be they could they may not be able to see in one half of the eye.
Hmm.
Um, it may be that there's a cataract that shrouds their vision in some places, but they could see other things. And so, depending on the type of visual impairment that they have, they may be very well able to see you, but they can't read the board, right? They can't read any
Okay.
characters or any street signs or anything like that. So it's important that there's something that identifies the person as being blind or visually impaired, but we want that to change from being keen so that people can be independent and do things for themselves without having to, always tell somebody, hey, I'm blind,
Yeah, and then I guess with the keying as well, you're adding a secondary handicap where you now have one hand always occupied, so you only have one hand,
Yes, that is true.
useful.
That is true.
Maybe something to look at is making it, well, it's already a wearable device, but it'd be good if like somebody involved in fashion would get involved and design like a jacket where you can have sensors on your shoulders,
Right.
kind of work it into the design so when you put it on, it just looks like a jacket. It doesn't look like you're wearing anything.
Well, I love that you brought that up because that's where I want to take it.
Mm.
And you mentioned fashion, and that has been something in my mind. I've been actually looking more towards the industrial design
Mm.
area, which would more or less include looking at ergonomics and how it would be worn. But a fashion designer would add a little bit more of a flair to it in terms of,
Yeah.
with this visual appeal and the aesthetics behind it that would make this product something that people want to wear. And, recognize that even though sometimes people might be blind or, they can't see anything with respect to the garments that they're wearing, but they're very much conscious
Mhm.
about, how they look and they want to be in style just like anybody
Yeah,
else.
everybody wanna
And
look
so,
good.
yeah,
Yeah.
so it's critical. We didn't think about it as much, but feedback that we got is that we
Hmm.
need to make this thing look good so that, when they wear it, they're comfortable.
The device so far seems to be a really great innovation. Um, but I would love to see you guys get a lot more support to really push this and fully develop it because I think you guys definitely have the ideas, the
Yeah.
ability is just the funding now. So, well, I'll help you guys promote it as much as I could.
Oh, well, I definitely
And
appreciate that.
this would be nice to see, go out on a world stage because this is something that isn't just going to stay localized to Trinidad. This isn't a product that's just going to stay localized to us alone.
Yes.
Um, so did you have to do any patents for your designs?
So I have gone to the Careers IP clinic, and then I've had several persons from the local patent office more or less given some advice on it. But we haven't taken it to the point where we say, okay, we could patent and whether it's to get a provisional patent or a full patent on the product. And the reason for that is that you need to have certain aspects of it that are not novel. And it involves a little bit more than just taking consumer electronics and putting them together to solve that problem. What we have to do is now create a new design. And that takes a little bit more financing
Right.
to do, the embedded systems design of the board, as well as the industrial design, which would sort of be along the lines of the fashion, right? What would be the form and fit for this particular product, so that you can actually pattern the look of it, right? The
Okay.
shape and
Okay.
everything. And so those are the areas that we're gonna have to refine a little bit more. And you mentioned just now that this is something that could be international. So I've actually, as I said, I've been presenting it internationally. We did a presentation in Jamaica as well as in Panama,
Mm.
right? And it was well received. So the one in Jamaica, we actually got an award from the ITU and Samsung at the last Accessible Americas, which was in 2018.
Mm.
And then recently, in October, I went to Panama to present at the LACNIC conference. And, people were very, very impressed by what we were able to accomplish within the region and, of course, with limited funding.
Right.
My next focus at this point in time is actually going to the Dubai 2020 Expo Live. And we actually submitted an application to that, and it got past the first leg of it, which is the pre-qualification screening, looking to see whether it met the criteria.
Mm.
And I recently would have completed the second stage, which is to submit the final application. So I am hoping now that once they receive that second application, they would review it, and we get accepted. So that I keep in Dubai next year, around maybe August to November month. I think that's when the Dubai 2020 Expo will be running. And they were going to provide funding for it as well. So it's
Oh, the
what.
Dubai Expo. If you win a prize there, part of the prize will be funding as well.
Yes, yes, yes. So you get to display it in Dubai as well as to get the funding to execute it over a period of a year. So
Oh, that's
yeah.
nice.
So there are opportunities internationally, and that's one of the things I want to encourage other persons in Trinidad and throughout the Caribbean to look at is you know look for those opportunities by subscribing to organizations like the World Bank and the IDB and the Caribbean Development Bank and other international foundations, because you may find that in the Caribbean we tend to have like a very risk averse culture when it comes to
Mm.
venture capital and investing. But internationally, depending on what you're doing, you're much more likely to get that support. So, I want to encourage everybody just to look outside and see what are the opportunities and take the risk and go.
Yeah, I think that's a good point because um, for just from looking from the outside, you get the feeling as though we lack creativity in Trinidad and the Caribbean, but that isn't really the problem. I think you're right. We just lack the financiers that are willing to take risks on these new projects that could possibly fail. And I mean, let's be honest, the companies in our small region just a lot smaller than the companies internationally because smaller countries, smaller economies, smaller markets. So the same risk will be a bigger risk for them.
Yes, that is true. So I mean, it would be a lot more risky for them to put out, let's say, $1 million US on a
Yeah.
project. Whereas in the US, $1 million US is like pocket change, right?
Mm.
They're looking to grow $1 billion companies. And so when you're talking about that type of scale, you can't really get $1 billion company growing in $1 billion economy. You could get $1 billion company growing in $1 trillion economy,
Right.
right? So I understand and I recognize that, but I think that we stymie our growth by not looking outside. So, for instance, a lot of companies they're much more comfortable going after what was traditional. So you have government contracts, you bid on that, you know, okay, there are a couple millions of dollars that you would be able to get off of that particular job when it's done. But you know what comes with government contracts: late payments,
Yeah.
you know, long lead times,
And a
sometimes
lot of
all
the
these other
government
things.
project contracts aren't to innovate anything new. It's about, I guess, implementing something that is already well established.
Yes,
Because
that is
I
correct.
know we have a lot of young engineers coming out to UE. Well, you and I are two of them. That just have ideas and just want to throw these ideas out there and see what sticks.
Yes, that is true. And I see it, and I'm always thinking, okay, they have access to all these resources, and resources in terms of money, but as well as, um, human capital, or something. I really hate that term. I prefer to say human potential, because we
Mm,
have so much potential to create new things. But a lot of these companies, they have access to people as well as resources, and they just go with the routine. And to me, that's a huge failure on their part, because it's it's very much possible that in addition to their routine things that they're doing, they can still innovate by looking at opportunities within their sector.
yeah.
So, for instance, if you were into construction, yes, you could put up the building, but you could also look at how can you innovate in terms of how you can create more efficient buildings. You can also look at how to make the equipment that you
Hmm.
use to put up the building, right?
Not just that, but I think your route is definitely a good route where you're looking to get well, outside attention from outside by entering into these competitions and getting this recognition. And then, well, I guess you still need some sort of sponsorship. Well, I guess sponsorship at this point still would help a lot, to get you to these events because it's not going to be cheap to go to Dubai and
Yes.
stuff like that. Um, and it'll be good even to get companies to partner up with innovators like you, where they could, like, if you meet certain criteria, like let's say, okay, you get to the second stage in Dubai, they agree to, if you make it to this stage, they will sponsor you to go across to there. So whereas they don't have to sponsor your project directly because that will be too expensive to them, they could at least get you
Ah,
to the
yes.
places that will open up that opportunity for you. So they take a lot less of a risk
Well,
and still, get you to benefit from it.
yes. So I must admit, and I should say that I've gotten support from the Caribbean Telecommunications Union,
Mm,
in getting to events. So I'll give you an example. Earlier this year, I went to the M Enabling Summit in Washington. That's around June month,
mm,
and that was actually sponsored on a fellowship from the CTU. And they looked at the device, and they saw the presentation I made in Jamaica, and they were very impressed. And so we actually developed a relationship since then. And so they took the opportunity to send me there, and I had to now network with different companies that are very much involved in assistive technologies, and to see what sort of assistive technologies and what is something they call accessible ICTs,
mm,
what can we bring back to the Caribbean. So those were additional opportunities, but I think we need more companies like that are willing to sponsor, even as you say, just the trip
mm.
itself is much less risky, and in fact, they can even benefit from it, because when you go there to different countries and meet people, you can network with persons who can actually make what they do a little bit more, business opportunities, etc. So you
Yeah.
could there are a lot
Yeah,
of
so you
things
could
that
be
can
an
come out of
ambassador
that.
for the company that's sending
Yes,
you across.
yes,
So it'll be a win-win relationship.
yeah.
That's definitely a good way to look at it. Or just, I guess, a quick clarification for anybody that doesn't know. ICT is what information and communication
Technology,
technologies.
yes, correct.
All right, so that would be helping people with disabilities. Well, in your case, I guess you focusing mostly on visual impairment disabilities
Yes, so
right now. Uh-huh.
the majority of my focus has been on visual impairment, but I won't limit it to that anymore.
Hmm.
So we've been looking at other technologies that can help persons who have physical disabilities, like for instance, they may be confined to a wheelchair, or perhaps who are deaf and hard of hearing.
Hmm.
And so they're new technologies, or some of them may not be as new, but they're not necessarily as prevalent in Trinidad, like cochlear implants
Hmm.
and bone conduction. We could look into some of these technologies to see, okay, how can we bring that access
Yeah.
to persons who are deaf here? Because one of the challenges with people who are deaf is that a lot of times they're excluded from the conversations and the information that is necessary to educate them. and to create those type of job opportunities. And so we realize that, in order to create like a inclusive society, especially now that a lot of the society and all the things that are happening here is going online, we're trending in that direction. We need to ensure that the most vulnerable populations and persons with disabilities are severely vulnerable in this case,
Mhm.
that they get an opportunity to come online and keep up with
Right,
society.
so you don't get left behind.
Yes.
But I think it's great you're focusing on visual impairment because I think that is a disability that a lot of people just afraid to even consider. Because when you look at it, I think you get the majority of information through your sight. Yeah, because
Yes.
I could walk around with earplugs on for 24 hours and get through my day like normal. I could I can't smell really good anyway. So without the sight to smell, that's nothing. Without taste, I mean, that's not a big deal either. But if I had to lose my sight for 24 hours, I think I would freak out. Like that's
Yeah.
like a scary thought. And then the fact that you have a lot of the world just isn't even geared towards people like that in mind. I think that makes it even scarier. So I think it's good that of all the things you choose to focus on, you choose to focus on this because I don't think enough is being done. Um, and I think with even like accessibility problems, right? So people that confined to wheelchairs and stuff.
Yes.
Glad to see that getting a lot more attention now. You see a lot of places being like wheelchair accessible. They're making that a point for a lot of new building construction. So that's good. I hope they keep it up. But again, I've seen like very, very little focus on people with visual impairments. They will do things like they will have, I guess, like braille on signs and stuff. But if you can't see where the sign is, how are you gonna know where to
Right.
touch the braille?
Yeah,
All right. So simple
that
things
is
like
true.
that. Simple things like that.
Well, interestingly enough, I mean, in the physical environment, there isn't as much focus, but in the digital space, I think
Mm.
there's much more for persons who are blind than any other type of disability,
Mm.
right? Because you have screen readers, screen magnifiers, you have braille displays, you have text, speech to text synthesizers. So, there's a lot of technologies now that have been developed to help so that, someone who is blind can utilize the internet just as efficiently as anybody else. And in fact, in some cases, like Marlon could use it much more efficiently
Mm.
because I'll give you an example. Marlon could be sitting where we are, and about 30 feet away, he's on his computer, plugging away and typing away in the computer,
Mhm.
right? And nobody would ever know that he's doing work. Why? Because he has, he has his Bluetooth headset in his ears. He has
Mm.
his keyboard in his hands, and he's able to now communicate wirelessly between his devices
Mm.
and the computer. And so, that's one of the things that we can't really do because
Yeah.
we don't listen to the feedback. We have to sit down and look at the screen and so physically constrained by what we do, but he could be doing it from anywhere,
Mm.
right? And so the technology has advanced to the point where persons who are visually impaired, and of course, if we want to be able to use the technology, there's no barriers to that. You just need to learn it. But we're just not accustomed because we're so reliant on vision. But I'm saying that there's a lot has been done in the space for people with visual impairment. What
Mm.
hasn't happened as much is for persons who are deaf or hard of hearing. I think there still needs to be a lot done there. And in terms of the assistive technologies, as well in terms of what um, the digital space can do. So, for instance, we rely a lot more on closed captioning, but what happens is that persons who are deaf, for them, written language is like a second language to them because they're accustomed to signing. And some of them are not able to read as well, and so we take it for
Oh, okay.
granted
Right.
that they will be able to look at it, the alphanumeric characters, and think, oh, this is what this means. But so
Yeah, but we associated those alphanumeric characters with sound,
yes,
and that is
correct.
the only reason we could read in the first place.
Yes.
I never even thought about that.
Yeah.
So, but that would be, I guess, it would be most difficult for people that were born deaf, so they never had the ability to, or the opportunity to actually hear the sounds that the different letters make. But I guess it wouldn't be as difficult for somebody that lost their hearing later in life, like through like just through degeneration of their hearing,
Yes.
like in their
So
50s,
yes,
60s, and stuff.
yeah. So much later in life is not a problem. But for if you lost your hearing after about age 8, then you'll be okay. Before that, it's much more difficult. Because, for instance, even with my daughter, she
Mhm.
would see the letters, and she would be able to make certain sounds, but she doesn't know how to put the letters together to make the word. And so through fatherhood, I must say that I appreciate language a little bit more because I have the challenge of now teaching her how to read. And so she knows the alphabet, she knows how to make all the sounds. But here's what I, if you combine the words in certain ways, the phonics part of it,
Mm.
it's difficult to look at that word and then determine, okay, what sound it makes. And I guess we go through the same challenge when we're learning a new language like Spanish or French, whatever.
Yeah.
There's certain ways in which you roll the R's when you're talking in
And then
Spanish,
and then
etc.
that OU, that OUGH, that could be bull or cough or like thorough, and it has
Yes,
that those same four letters, but they sound so differently.
yes.
And
So
yeah.
I mean, you get a greater appreciation for language when you go to different countries because in
Mm.
some cases, you can't speak the language whatsoever, and it's not because you're not intelligent,
Mm.
right? It's just that you didn't have that sort of exposure growing up. And I mean, for persons who are deaf, it's the same thing. You live within the environment, but you never really get that exposure to
Mhm.
understand it properly, right? So I think as we progress as a society, we have to now try to understand how to include everyone and understand the different challenges. And because of the hyper competitive nature that we live in, right, of this particular world,
All
we
right.
need to be able to understand how to include everyone, and that's a huge challenge.
And well, on that same vein, was it? I think it was you and Marlon that developed the blind way forward.
Yes. So the
Right. So
blind
what
way
is the
forward.
blind way forward?
So the blind way forward again, Marlon's brainchild.
Hmm.
It came out of his experience, which is when he got, I think he was about 30, 31, 32, he started to lose his vision. And he was not able to transition or adjust to blindness as quickly as he would have liked. I think it period took about maybe 3 to 6 months for him to really get accustomed to the fact that here's what I'm blind, I accept that I'm blind, and now I need to actually do things to actually make my life a little bit better. And it took time because one, he didn't have the support and he didn't have the knowledge on how to transition. So in order to make that process easier for other people who might be going through the same problem, what we did is we tried to create a package in the form of a film
Hmm.
as well as some other auxiliary or ancillary type of stuff that can actually support them. So there's a booklet that provides information to the family. There's an audio book that goes along with it as well. It gives much more information. But the film itself, which is 30 minutes long, covered a lot of the different challenges, and we broke it up into different teams. So, for
Hmm.
instance, if you're cooking, let's say you're applying, you need to make a meal. How do you do that? If you want to get involved in entertainment or sports, what are the different types, and who is currently involved that has had a visual impairment? What type of sports
Hmm.
are they involved in? And so, for example, we had Carlos Green, the blind Olympian
He was a weightlifter,
and weightlifter,
right?
yes, and
Power
shot
lifter,
putter.
yeah.
We interviewed him to talk about his experiences. We also looked at certain professions like radio announcers, and
Hmm.
so we talked to Kern Tyson. Right, he was a 98.1.
Hmm.
Spoke to him, and just to get his experiences, in terms of one how he became blind, to how has he been able to cope, and even though he's doing in his professional, how does what his words of encouragement to persons who might be going through that same challenge and wanting to get involved in something like what he's doing. And so we did that to really inspire and to get people, aware that having a visual impairment, whether you were born with it or you acquired it, is not the end of the world.
Hmm.
What you really require is knowledge.
Yeah, just an
Yeah.
obstacle to overcome, and then you could live a life just as full and fruitful as you would have even with
Yes.
the vision.
Yes, that is true. But I think, in addition to, of course, having the right mindset and information, we also need a society that is much more aware and empathetic,
Mhm.
because it would be um, it would be futile to just say, okay, you alone could do everything, and if you just have a positive mindset about it, it
Mhm.
will work out for you. We really need people to be aware of the fact that if someone has a disability, regardless if it's visual impairment, hearing impairment, whether you're deaf or hard of hearing, or, if you're mobility challenge, you need to now make certain accommodations, right, that would allow for them to live a full life.
Mhm.
And without that, it would make it much more difficult for them to adjust.
So, what could ordinary people do to, I guess, make life better or easier for people around them that have like a visual impairment disability?
Well, I would say the first thing you want to do is to seek to understand first,
Mhm.
right? Try to have a conversation. At the end of the day, I mean, if the person is deaf, it might be a little bit more difficult for you to have a conversation with them unless you use the mobile phone,
Mhm.
right? And but having conversations helps you to understand their perspective, and that way you can be much more empathetic, and you can then know what you could do to be of assistance to them.
So, the three main things you worked on so far was the MobiAssist, the Blind Way Forward, and this Empowered,
Right,
the
yes.
Empowered project. What is that about?
So the Empowered platform, that is an initiative to create opportunities for persons with disabilities to get jobs online. And we're talking here about jobs like graphic design, website development, animation, etc., which are very high skilled, high paying type jobs. And you don't require a lot of investment upfront.
Mm.
So if you're doing graphic design, it's really about your skill and having maybe a decent laptop that has certain amount of RAM, certain amount of hard drive space, to be able to produce an end product, which is usually the graphics work, for magazines, for logos, etc., for companies. You can do the branding, etc. These are very, very well paid, and usually uh, they're done by freelancers,
Mm.
right? So I'm looking at that space, and I have a little bit of experience with it, to be able to get persons with disabilities trained there, and then it allows them the flexibility to be able to work from home.
Yeah, so they wouldn't have to deal with I guess mobility issues, having to travel to and from work,
Yes, that is
and yeah,
correct.
the stress that'll be involved with that, and that's good because that way you're not being patronizing to them, because I think that's a problem that that's a problem with something we do sometimes. We would kind of just patronize somebody with a disability and treat them as though they can't take care of themselves or something, or treat them as though they lesser than who they really are,
Yes,
instead of just saying, just help them get the tools to just be able to be independent, do everything for themselves. So I think this Empowered program is a good way of doing that, because there aren't a lot of high paying jobs that would be looking for people with disabilities, and I don't think you'd see a lot of opportunities open for them. Well, I guess without the knowledge.
but yes, and it has to do with the fact that one companies aren't necessarily looking to hire persons with disabilities because of the perception
Mm,
that they can't do certain things.
mm.
And
Although they'll be politically correct and they'll never actually say that to their face, they just won't give them the
yes,
job offer. And
yes,
that's where
that
the
is
problem
true.
is. We patronize them, we'll patronize them to their face, and then we wouldn't give them the tools to actually
Yes,
truly help them out, and just sort of hope they'll be somebody else's problem, or hope they carry their problems elsewhere. And I
yes.
think, yeah, I think that's like a part of the problem.
That's a huge part of the problem. And I mean, I've been in this space, I would say, for about 5 years, really listening and understanding, empathizing with them. And it grieves me, and say sometimes, it's a pet peeve when I
Mm-hmm.
go to different international or even sometimes regional conferences and you hear policymakers and politicians talk about what is being done. And then you realize, oh, but, you know, it's just talk,
Yeah, like
right?
what is the end result? How is it impacting this individual sitting down here with this visual impairment, this hearing
Yes.
impairment? Like the policy is just
Yeah. So
not translating into actual results.
a lot of it is just showboating. So
Mm.
we're doing this to see that we have a project being implemented,
Yeah.
but there's no direct impact and benefit to the community. And so, one of the key things that I said to them, I said, here's what, if we're not making an impact, if we're not actually doing things that benefit them, this is not making sense, right? So we want to improve the quality of life of persons with disabilities. And how we do that, I think, firstly, is to empower them to be able to earn an income,
Mm.
right? And I've been pushing the Empowered project. In fact, that got us to the Entrepreneurship World Cup.
Oh, that's the project that got you.
Yes, right. And the Empowered project has the potential to scale globally, right?
Mm.
All the projects we've been working on has great potential, but this one has definitely a high earning capacity because a lot of the persons with disabilities that I know of have the skills.
Mm.
What they lack sometimes is the opportunity to use those skills in an economic context.
And then this is mostly, I guess, software oriented. So the startup cost for this would be a lot lower because you don't have the hardware costs of the
Yes.
MobiAssist.
Yes, yes. So the movie assist has the potential to liberate people to be able to move, within the environment that they live in. But of course, to be able to get to market, a hardware product requires you to have um, not just a prototype, but you need to have a fully designed product
Mm.
that has been tested at an FC and certified at an FCC lab or UL laboratory or both. Some cases, you have multiple certifications and tests to do. You also need to protect the intellectual property,
Yeah.
right? Then once you have those two things, you need to get a factory or some kind of manufacturing plant to actually make or produce it, and then there's certain minimum quantities that they're going to order. And
Mm.
then, of course, you need to have a distribution channel, right, through
Yeah.
suppliers. So it's a very
And then
long
marketing on
road.
top of that.
Right, Mark. So that's what drives up the cost. And then in terms of persons with disabilities, many of them, live in places that are hard to reach, right? And I'm saying hard to reach from the perspective of we don't know where they are and
Mm.
they don't have access to technology. So you typically have to go through these different disability support organizations to see who's on the register, and then you can figure out how to reach out to them. Sometimes they might have phone numbers that you can call them, right? But you
Yeah.
still need to get access to that information from
If
those organizations.
I don't think if there was a way for you to somehow get in contact with like the U.S. Army or something, because I know they do a lot of work on catering for people with disabilities because they have people that are injured in combat and
Yes.
stuff,
Yeah.
and I know they always throw money behind things like this. But again, um, I just don't know how that would work out. Somebody coming from our country, like if they will jump onto this project or help it out in any sort of way. But if it was possible to get this hardware project across to that level, that would be good. But yes, but the important one thing, I guess, that wouldn't have to they wouldn't have any problems with distribution, manufacturing, or
Yes.
hardware like that. And this is something it'll just be scalable. The way software is scalable, once somebody else downloads it, you have a new user. But what about from like the employer side of it? So let's say I'm looking for people to work at my company. Um, would there also be a way to connect me with people with these skills?
Right. So that's what we're looking at because, for instance, the employer gets the benefit of the skill from the person with a disability. And so I'll give you an example of someone um, has a visual impairment who's very good at audio and visual production. He actually has a studio, and
Mm.
that's Jason Desant. So Jason was born blind, and he does jingles for RBC,
Okay.
right? Now he's one of the exceptions. He's very good at it, and he runs his own studio He hires people. He's a well-known businessman. What I'm thinking, based upon my experience talking with other persons who have similar skills, is how can we get them on a micro level to be able to offer their services to these organizations? And if organizations like RBC are willing to pay for Jason Deason to do his work, then it means that there are other organizations similar to that that would be able to see here's what we have a corporate social responsibility policy, or perhaps they look at the work that they've done and say, here's what this is what we want, right? So we need to look at it from the perspective of um, well, one, it takes traditional marketing to reach out to these companies. So how do you market and get them on the platform? And then how do you reach out to them based upon whatever their strategic vision or goal is for the organization? And so I see a lot of the NGOs, foundations, um, development agencies, etc. They are the typical customers that we're looking for to be able to utilize this type of service.
But it would be good to see if you could branch out into, I guess, like ordinary corporate companies, private companies, um, maybe even set up something like similar to Caribbean jobs, but for people with disabilities.
Well, we wanted it to be a little bit more than just a job seeking platform. We wanted people to be able to to collaborate online and do the work. So, for instance, if there's a project that requires multiple different skills,
Yeah.
we can actually get groups of persons with disabilities collaborating online and doing those jobs. So that's the end goal for this particular platform because let's say it's a branding project. One person might be able to do it. But if it is you have someone who could do the graphics, someone who might be able to do animation film, somebody else doing the website, etc., they all come together to be able to implement that particular project. And then coming out of that project now they get a percentage that's paid to them and a percentage that stays in the company.
So how would monetization of the empowerment platform would be? Because you'll still need some sort of monetization to expand as well as maintain the
Yes.
operation.
So the monetization comes off of the fees that are paid. So there's a percentage. We're looking here at about 15% on each transaction that takes place on the platform.
All right, so that way they have no startup capital at all
Yes.
involved.
Yeah.
And well, so the blind way forward now, the blind way forward, that's something that just is monetized. That's more like a
So the blind way forward, it was more or less a project to educate the public. Now, in terms of monetization, we're doing workshops,
right.
right? So workshops with, you come to the workshop, you learn a little bit more about what technologies are available to you, how to live a little bit much more freely. Even though you have a visual impairment, how can you get out and what sort of places do you go to? What sort of support services or how, if you need someone to help you, where can you get that support? Right? And so that is what the Blind Way Forward is about. And so we're going to do some more workshops coming up. We did a workshop um, in 2016. We did some other workshops related to technology. So, for instance, the B Mobile um, smartphone technologies workshop was done,
Yeah.
and that one was to educate specifically on the smartphones.
Okay, so B Mobile got involved in that as well.
Yes, it was a B Mobile project. So Marlon was more involved with that with Pavi, and so it was exactly a Pavi project, but Marlon was directly involved in that.
Oh, that's good though. That's
Right.
so the company would have sponsored the workshop in that case, and you guys would have come in and hosted the workshop to people that wanted to see it.
Yes, right. And then recently we did a workshop for the UN on increasing access to technologies for persons with disabilities, and I facilitated that workshop, right? And so that one was all about the universal service funds, the fact that there's money available for persons to implement these types of projects, but a lot of the disability support organizations and the universal service funds themselves have not implemented any projects and or very very little projects. Let's just put it that way.
Right.
And the reason for that is they lack the the capacity and knowledge in terms of what types of assistive technologies are available, and then how do you craft that entire project. And so what we did was we educated them on the different types as best as possible. What we had available, we demonstrated that, and then we showed them, okay, this is how you're going to access the universal funds. These are the procedures. So, for instance, when there's a call for proposal, you need to be able to pay attention to that. You need to look at the eligibility criteria of the proposal. Then you need to be able to craft the proposal properly, know how they're going to evaluate it, and then when you do get the proposal approved, how do you execute on that project? And so that is one of the more recent projects. We did that in October, and that was done with 7 countries throughout the Caribbean. We had people coming in from St. Lucia, Jamaica, Grenada, St. Vincent, and the Grenadines, St. Kitts, etc. And then, of course, a lot of persons from Trinidad.
What does Ipsum have planned for the future now?
Well, going into 2020,
Yeah.
I mentioned the Dubai Expo 2020. I've been also looking at some other fellowships to go to try and raise the awareness of what we do internationally. So 2020 is mostly about business development, and we're going to try to do some more workshops in between to get that done. But part of what we have to do is raise the awareness of what we have done already, so that we can get the funding and support necessary to take it forward.
What has your experience been like in terms of? I know we touched on this earlier, but dealing with the intellectual property office, you guys didn't do any you guys don't have any patents out as yet because you'll need to do, I guess, more detailed designs, not just grouping consumer products, but by making like
Yes.
a purpose-built product specifically for your your application,
Yes,
and
that is
only then you
correct.
could apply for the patent.
Yes. So even if you have a design and you can demonstrate how it would work, that then you can go ahead and patent it. You see, patenting takes time, right? And it also costs money. So if it is that we go ahead and we try to patent something that at this point isn't patentable, or is a slim chance that it might actually be defendable, and wasting money,
Right.
right?
How expensive is getting a patent down here?
Um, so the cost is really is the lawyer fees, and the fact that we don't have a lot of lawyers who could help with the patent process. I don't know the specific filing cost. I have to do a little more research on that.
Yeah, because I get a feeling like we don't file a lot of patents in this country.
No, I mean there are a few people who do it,
Yeah.
but there's much more to patenting than just filing the patent. You have to file a patent that you know people will want to buy the product from you, right? Based
Yeah.
upon now, there are a lot of persons doing research in the field that I'm doing, so it's not just as simple as okay, well, I created something, so I need to patent it. I need to be able to know, okay, what is the demand specifically for this once it's patented, right? And I have an idea, but we need to promote it. So once you promote it and we know that people are willing to buy it, then we can say, okay, here's what you need to make sure that this is protected fully.
I think that's a kind of bad approach though. Well, not on your part. I just think as a country we should be, if we want to promote innovation in this country, we should be making patenting as easy and as cheap as possible, maybe even free. I think patenting should just be funded by the government or something because if you look at a lot of patents that are done in the US and different countries, the patents aren't done because they economically viable. A lot of the time, they're just done to protect your idea to make sure that nobody else can come in and
Yes.
monetize it. You even have a lot of incomplete ideas that are patented. Patented. I know Apple patented the shape of the iPad. It's like they patented
Right.
an actual shape. You have more ridiculous patents. I'm sure I could probably get some examples,
Yeah,
but
well, they would have protected the industrial design for it. So
yeah.
there's a little bit of difference between patenting and industrial design protection. So if I do a design of a particular shape, I can protect that. But patenting is a lot more involved,
Mhm.
right? So and your protection is for basically 20 years. So you can patent the technology, you can patent the
Right.
process, but you can't really patent the shape. You can protect the shape.
Right. Through
Yeah,
industrial design, like not really trademark, but as in your well, yes, it'll still be your intellectual property for a
yes,
particular shape.
yeah, kind of like how the chubby bottle is patented.
Right. Right.
Sorry,
Right.
the
The shape.
industrial design,
Yeah,
sorry,
for the
shape is
chubby bottle.
protected.
I think it's just bad to have something like lawyer fees as a potential barrier between you and getting your idea patented. And is our patent or is something patented by our IPO recognized worldwide or just in certain regions?
No, so if you patent something in Trinidad, it's only protected in Trinidad. And similarly, if you patent something in the US, it's only protected in the US. So that's the trick with patenting.
Yeah,
You have to file the patent in the different countries that you intend to trade in.
but I think no, this is not something I have a lot of experience in, so I'll probably have to look it up further. But I think the U.S. Patent Office also has like partnerships with like the whatever patent office the Europeans use, so that they don't infringe on each other's patents. So like if you patent in one country, it might be automatically recognized in another. But I know Asia is completely different because they just kind of I don't think they care much about
Ye-
intellectual property at all.
Yeah, so I mean, in Asia, it might be even be frowned upon for them because they innovate through copying different things, right?
Yeah.
And then they improve it and then they can patent it. In the US, so there are different companies that can help you with filing patents. And so if it is you, let's say you go online, you see you want a patent in these countries,
Mhm.
you can automatically have it patented in Australia, in the US, in England, and wherever, right? But if it is you filing directly with a particular patent agency, then you only part protected in that one country. So
Hmm.
you can utilize the service to patent in multiple countries.
But do you know if we have any of those services available down here?
Well, we can access the services, but it's not going to be patented. If it is we go to the IP office in Trinidad, it
Mhm.
will only be protected here. We could utilize the service and patent in all the countries, but again, the more countries you patent
Yes,
in,
the
is the more
more money you
cost.
have to pay.
Yes.
And that would be like what an annual fee, or just one time upfront cost for 20 years?
I think it's an annual fee, in fact. Yeah,
Huh.
yeah. But it's not, I mean, you protect it. It's not like a huge annual fee,
Right.
right? Well, of course, in more countries, you patent in the bigger
Yeah, it's
the
bigger
fee.
if you agree. All right, well, Sean, thanks for sitting down and
Yeah.
you know let me dive into Ipsum Technologies. So, where did the name Ipsum come from?
So Ipsum is actually Latin, and
Uh-huh.
we were actually, when we were forming the company, it wasn't actually my name. It was Ukira, who was one of my other co-founders. He would have
Mhm.
come up with the name, and he says, Latin is like meaning I or self. And so we ran with it. We said, okay, Ipsum. Ipsum, some people, if you're into web development, you can talk about lorem ipsum.
Yeah,
But
like
yeah,
placeholder
yeah,
title. Yeah.
yeah. But ipsum is essentially Latin, no? Meaning
Mhm.
put into I or self.
Well, nice, nice. Well, once again, thanks for sitting down, having a good chat.
Yes,
Um,
Shazil, thank you for reaching out to me and for highlighting what we do.
yeah, we'll definitely keep an eye on what you're doing. And anybody out there listening, Ipsum Technologies could use some support, some sponsorship. Get these ideas. It's not just good for people with these impairments, but also good for I guess Trinidad on the whole, getting our creative youth out there.
Yes, and trust me, we have a lot of talented people in Trinidad and throughout the Caribbean, and we just need a little bit of support.
Mhm.
And that support doesn't necessarily have to be only monetary. Monetary, it could be through liking pages, referrals, telling people about what we do, getting that networking and that support,
Just getting the name
publicity,
out
and
there
get
as
it
much
out
as you
there.
possibly could.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks again. Have a good day.
All
All
right.
right,
Cool.
everyone. Take care.
Thank you.